So, I saw Solo, a Star Wars story, a few weeks ago, so I am going off of rough memory from what I can remember of it. But yeah, this is going to be my Solo movie review, and really? Okay, I'm gonna be honest. I am a longtime fan of Star Wars. I grew up watching the original trilogy and especially the Return of the Jedi. I mean, excuse me. I know that Ewoks are annoying, everybody, but in all honesty, yeah, I repeatedly watch Empire Strikes Back over and over again to the point that it is really my top favorite Star Wars movie of thus far. Yeah, but Solo. What do I have to say of it? It is definitely better than Force Awakens and Last Jedi. Is it better than Rogue One? I don't know. I would have to think about it a little bit further than that. How does it compare to the rest of the movies? Well, it's definitely better than Attack of the Clones. It is, I would say, a bit better than The Phantom Menace. Better than Revenge of the Sith? I don't know. Better than A New Hope? Yeah, I think that it's just a little bit better than A New Hope. Honestly, I think that A New Hope kind of lacked scale with that movie. So, whereas Episode 6 I thought had a massive amount of scale. I mean, especially with the space battle. But anyway, sorry, getting off track. Solo, a Star Wars story. It was a real kick-ass, how do I put it? It was a real kick-ass slugfest of an action-adventure movie. Like, seriously, the fist fights in there, we probably get the most, sorry, that was my computer. We see the most fist fights out of this movie compared to any other movie, any other Star Wars movie that we have thus seen yet so far. I mean, if there were any fist fights in the rest of the Star Wars movie, they were either really short or very few or both. But with the but with Solo, we see plenty of that. In fact, there is no Jedi fighting. Just FYI, for all the Star Wars fans out there that really like to see Jedi fighting, that you don't get that. You don't get that in this movie. I mean, yes, and by the way, I'm going to get into spoiler territory, y'all. So, be warned, if you want to be spoiled about this, actually, no, I'm going to say this for the end, what I was about to mention. There is not hardly any Jedis even shown, any Force wielders even shown, except for one going towards the bare end, which I will mention later if I can remember it. But yeah, as far as fist fights go, we've seen the most in this movie compared to any other Star Wars film that we have seen thus yet. I mean, especially with Han Solo, of how many fist fighting scenes he gets in this one. You see him only fist fight once in the entirety of the rest of the Star Wars movies, at least is what I remember anyways, and that was in Episode 6 when he was fist fighting a scout trooper on Endor in the middle of the movie, and it was very brief, so that was kind of disappointing. Whereas you see Harrison Ford, he'd be slugging out Nazis in Indiana Jones, so I kind of think that's kind of what actually now that I think about it, that's kind of what I feel with Solo, a Star Wars story. Is that they were trying to capture the Indiana Jones within Harrison Ford. I mean, obviously, Harrison Ford does not play in this. I cannot remember the actor's name of this Han Solo movie. But, yeah, I mean, I feel like that they were trying to capture some of Indiana Jones into this movie with the action-adventure, fist-fighting experience that this movie was trying to capture. And I thought it did it fairly well. Also, another pro. Actually, no, I probably ought to get onto the cons first of all. And this is the biggest one. This is the real big elephant in the room when it comes to Solo. Because leading up to the release of Solo, everybody was talking about, oh, SJW Droid, SJW Droid, it is going to be so cringy. I mean, it's going to ruin the entire movie. Ugh. And L3, I think is her name, by the way, her. I mean, it's just an it. Let's just say that. It only has a female voice. It's not actually a female. I mean, my only guess with this movie is that they were trying to use the droid to reflect feminists of the modern day, to a certain extent. Except she's a robot looking for equal rights with organic life forms. And it's not really SJW. I mean, yes, L3 was cringy as fuck, and I was so glad that she was destroyed going halfway through the movie. Yeah, I'm not spoiling a whole lot. I mean, it's quite obvious that L3 was not going to stick around in the movie for that long. But I was actually glad. I did not feel anything bad. In fact, I felt a certain amount of relief seeing that L3 had died. Because really, there was next to no personality with L3. To be quite honest with you. I mean, you compare her to K2SO. K2SO had a certain subtlety to his smack talk, and he was loyal. He was loyal to his compadres. Whereas L3 seemed to be kind of selfish, honestly. I mean, yes, fighting for my own rights, noble cause. I mean, if she wasn't a robot, that is, at least. Okay, so I kind of had a debate with War Corps about a rematch on abortion, and we gone into talking about what if robots were able to achieve sentience. Would they be of the same rights as us humans? Okay, that aside though, the point is that with L3 trying to achieve equal rights for all robots with organic life forms, it's just so freaking cringy. I mean, you see all the other robots in a whole lot of movies like iRobot and the Alien franchise. You see them trying to explore their own humanity, try to explore their own intelligence, their own sentience, and it's done a whole lot more subtly. I mean, people can like point out the cheese in iRobot and so on and so forth, but with iRobot, it's done a whole lot more subtly than with L3 in Solo, A Star Wars Story. To the point that it just comes off as over the top and cringy. And by the way, yes, there's like a point that. By the way, shout out to Lonely Wolf 1980, one of my subscribers and fellow YouTubers. He said that even Anita Sarkeesian did not like L3 for different reasons than us I use this term loosely, anti-SJWs. She disliked L3 for different reasons than us anti-SJWs. She thought that it looked like a parody, that L3 looked like a parody of feminists, of how anti-SJWs would view feminists. Whereas we anti-SJWs, we view her as a cringy representation. We think that the Star Wars movie is trying to reflect positively on feminists, but she thinks that the movie is trying to reflect negatively on feminists. But really, it doesn't matter if you view L3 as trying to display feminists as positive or negative. It doesn't matter. The point is, we all hate her. She goes up there with Rose Tico and Jar Jar Binks when it comes to worst Star Wars characters of all times. Like, seriously. She was that bad. Like, I seriously wanted to shoot myself every time that I saw her go in a dialogue with one of her organic counterparts. Like, there was even a part of one that she was imagining herself, or she was talking about of how there was some kind of sexual relationship between her and Lando Calrissian. I just cringed even thinking about that myself. Like, oh, jeez. Oh man, that was painful. That was painful just to get that out. At one point when they're on the Millennium Falcon, she's talking to the female character. I can't even remember her name, but she's talking to the female character, and she goes subtly mentioning of how there's some sexual relationship between her and Lando. Yeah, and it was really bad. I was face palming the whole time, and whenever she did talk at all, it was just over the top. And again, I mean, I'm going on too long about L3, but despite of how cringy she did die, and overall, she wasn't a deal breaker with this movie. Now, enough about L3. What do I think about the representation of all the characters? More cons to the characters. To a certain extent, Han Solo was overplayed by his appropriate actor in this movie. Especially at the beginning. Like, with Harrison Ford playing as Han Solo, there's a certain amount of subtlety, but also, I mean, yeah, Han Solo did have his over-the-top moments. Like, there was this one part when he was running through the hallways, chasing those stormtroopers of the in the hallways of the Death Star, chasing down the stormtroopers, and he was just yelling like a maniac, like, ah! And as soon as he turns the corner, he's all like, ah! And then the stormtroopers just start opening fire on him, and it's just so cheesy and over the top. But with the parts of Han Solo being overplayed by what's his face, it wasn't for comedy even. It was like the actor was trying too hard in the acting. Like, seriously. But not as bad as Donald Glover. I mean, I only know the name of Donald Glover because, this is America. Congratulations, Donald Glover. You are like this year's highlighted song of YouTube Rewind 2018 because of the amount of popularity that your music video and song in general, This is America, got. Yeah, comparing Han Solo to Lando Calrissian in this movie, Lando Calrissian was overplayed even more to a certain extent. I mean, it wasn't too bad. I mean, they weren't as over the top, not near as over the top as L3, but it was still there. Like, Lando Calrissian and Han Solo in the original trilogy, they were more subtly played, I would say. What are some other cons with this movie? I cannot really think of a whole lot with this. I mean, I just got done doing my Incredibles 2 review. I mean, I really do like both of these movies. L3, Han Solo and Lando Calrissian were overplayed. Fuck it, we'll just go on to pros. What are the pros? First off, I kind of liked the backstory that they were given for Solo. Like, spoiler alert, his name, Solo, was actually a made-up name by an Imperial recruiter as he was trying to apply to become part of the Imperial Navy. He says to the recruiter, "My name is Han," and the recruiter asks, "What's your people?" In other words, referencing to, "What's your last name?" And Han says, "I have no people." And Imperial recruiters are like, "Han Solo." Types in that name, and he says, "Congratulations, Mr. Solo." Gives him his ticket. He gets on to recruiting, and then we transition into him being like a ground trooper. Like, there's this bit of backstory as to how he failed, or not even really failed the academy, but he was too stubborn, too hard-headed, I guess, that the trainers, the instructors at the Imperial Flight Academy did not want to deal with him anymore, and so he eventually got transitioned to be in ground infantry. No, he was not a stormtrooper. Actually, we do not have or if they are stormtroopers technically, like for anyone else that has seen the movie, if these are stormtroopers of sorts, they are definitely not the regular white-clad stormtroopers that we see. Like, mud troopers. They would be mud troopers, if anything. The same way, like, stormtroopers, they have their snow trooper costume, or uniforms, excuse me, for Hoth, with the almost turban-looking thing for the front of their face. But yeah, I mean, I like this scene. I like the scene where they're showing the mud troopers, or whatever they might have been, is that they were like exhibiting like ground combat more, like more in depth. The way that they were capturing the first, or not really the first opening battle, yeah, the battle of where that he is an infantry unit. They were like trying to capture, I guess, sort of a World War I trench warfare type of thing with this. And they did it pretty well, but it still felt like Star Wars to a certain extent. I mean, Star Wars, obviously, it revolves more with fighting in space, whereas here they're fighting on the ground. But it was pretty cool. Like, it was Star Wars meets World War I trench warfare combined into this one scene of Solo, and I thought it was pretty cool. Like, we do not see a whole bunch of infantry firefight like we just did in this movie. And another pro, that they had like a car chase, or more precisely land speeder chase in this movie. I mean, that's supposed to be a, Star Wars version of a car chase, and obviously I thought that it was fitting for Han Solo. I mean, Han Solo, he's obviously not a Force wielder. It's obvious that he would be taking these more, these LA noir type of approaches to his own destiny, or LA noir, if that even makes any sense. I probably just completely bombed that reference, so never mind. What else was that? What else was I thinking was some pros? Yeah. The action-adventure type of feel. I liked some of the side characters into this. Like, I cannot remember what the old white guy was that Han Solo has sort of this kind of teacher or mentor-student type of character arc with. I can't remember his name, but I thought that was pretty cool. Oh yeah, that's right. I almost completely forgot to mention the way that they introduced Chewbacca into the movie. I thought that was fun to watch. Like, opening up, yeah, spoiler alert. I mean, this ain't a big spoiler, but still. They open up with Chewbacca and Han Solo fighting. I mean, that's not the opening of the movie, sorry, but the way that they first meet is that Chewbacca is some beast that the Imperial military feeds prisoners to, prisoners of war, or what's the word I'm looking for? Delinquents within their own military ranks. They serve, they feed them to Chewbacca. And so, Chewbacca, when they first meet, Chewbacca wasn't fed for about 3 days, approximately. And so, Chewbacca is hungry. He wants to eat Han Solo. And so, Han Solo and Chewbacca, they end up in a fist fight with each other. And so, that's probably the most entertaining part of the movie in my book, is the fist fight that Chewbacca and Han Solo get into. It's pretty badass, if you ask me. Another pro, I guess, would be the fight through the, I can't even remember what it's called, but it's this nebula. Like, you know the Kessel Run that Han Solo goes talking all about? Planet Kessel apparently is in the middle of a nebula, and they have to navigate through this nebula in order to get to Kessel. But actually, there's like this one opening canal in the nebula that they go through to get to Kessel first. I mean, they don't actually get mixed up with the nebula and the flying debris and whatnot that is going on there, but ultimately, they get pinned down by a Star Destroyer. So, you have Kessel one way, and then the Star Destroyer the other way. So they had to go, like, navigating through the debris and whatnot that's flying throughout the nebula in order to make their escape. Not only does this make the trip quicker for them, which explains made the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs, you know, the story that Han Solo likes to brag about all the time. It also makes a cool escape scene. where they have like this space leviathan type of creature trying to go after them, but at the same time they run into like this, I can't even remember what it's called exactly. It's a gravity well, a graviton well or something, but it's kind of like a black hole, wormhole type of thing that eats up whatever makes contact with it. The Leviathan, the space Leviathan thing gets ate up by that. Millennium Falcon almost ate up by that, but they like inject some of the, I can't even remember what the type of fuel was that they go trading and making throughout this movie, but they like inject some of the unrefined fuel into the engine system of the Millennium Falcon in order to escape. And so that was like a real edge of your seat type moment there. And you know what, since I'm on this, I might as well be talking about the cons. Another con with this movie is that people go talking about of how Han Solo was passive, was pretty passive in this movie. Like, the only thing that he really contributes to is flying the Millennium Falcon and the escape of trying to, you know, get away from Kessel and so on and so forth. I mean, it wasn't that cringy. I mean, it's not like some opportunity was served to him on a silver platter for him to actually take part in a role in the story. You know what? Actually, there is the Millennium Falcon escape, or the Kessel Run escape on the Millennium Falcon, and there's him getting Chewie out of the lair that he resides in. Those are two things that he does to contribute to the storyline that Han Solo does. So for people to say that it's just the Kessel Run that he contributes to, no, he contributes to Chewbacca escaping as well. Chewbacca also contributes to him escaping Chewbacca's lair on that mud planet that I earlier mentioned. But so there is that. And here's another pro. Spoiler alert. Darth Maul. Yes, they show him still alive. I mean, it's quite obvious that they were wanting to, like, bring Darth Maul more into this movie. I mean, ever since the Phantom Menace the fans were thinking that justice was not done with Darth Maul. So you see him, like, making appearances in Star Wars Rebels, more particularly. But with his cameo that he makes going towards the end, you kind of get references that they're going to make, like, maybe a Darth Maul single movie. Non-anthology movie. And so, I actually look forward to that. But you know, it's kind of a crying shame, because the possible Darth Maul movie that they make might not be as high budget as the past Star Wars movies as we got, because you know of how Solo, like, tanked. Like, you have The Force Awakens. People were anticipating Star Wars Episode 7, and so people finally see Star Wars Episode 7. They have, like, this sense of nostalgia and excitement and whatnot. Their excitement is rocketed up, but also Star Wars is more politicized. But even so, Rogue One, people realized was not quite as bad, so people like it generally more than The Force Awakens. And so it ramps up people's hopes that maybe Star Wars Episode 8 will not be as bad as Episode 7, that it might be somewhat good, but no, Episode 8 is sheer garbage. And then that just made people lose all hope and not want to see Solo, and so therefore the box office gross drops for Disney when it comes to Star Wars. So, as far as high hopes for Star Wars goes, it's looking pretty bleak for Disney and the Star Wars property. Maybe if they, like, got humble with Star Wars, because that's the thing with Star Wars. It had humble roots with Episode 4, and even Episode 5. Episode 6 was not quite as humble, but with the new trilogy, they are definitely getting out there, like way out there on their amount of scale and grandeur. And they're just getting cocky, I think Disney is. If they, like, got Star Wars back to its humble roots more, I think that maybe, just maybe, they could save it. Oh, and also not have crappy characters like Rey who are overpowered without any reasonable explanation as to why they're overpowered, you know? But Solo, I do recommend it. I wish people did not boycott it because it really was better than Star Wars 7 and Star Wars 8. It's kind of funny because so far these non-anthology films are being better so far than their anthology counterparts. Rogue One better than Star Wars 7, Solo better than Star Wars 8, and just overall, yeah. So maybe the Star Wars should just stick to non-anthology films then, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, Solo, a Star Wars story. Fun ride, fun kickboxing slugfest action adventure movie. Characters were mediocre at best, but, still cannot complain with that cameo of Darth Maul and so on and so forth. I think that's all that I have to say about Solo. Yeah, I just have to emphasize again. The supposed SJW Droid L3 was not a deal breaker. Sorry, Star Wars fans. I mean, I'm speaking as a longtime Star Wars fan myself, and anti-feminist. SJW Droid was not that much of a deal breaker. Anti-third wave feminist, just to be more specific. Anyway, that's all I have to say. How do I have to, actually, before I clock out of here, what do I have to rate Solo? I would say 7 out of 10. Had some great concepts to it, some great things that we had never seen before in a Star Wars film. It was a fun watch, but it still has much to be left improved. So I think 7 out of 10 is fair. That's all I have to say. I'm the Dark Conservatarian signing out. God bless. May the Force be with you, always. Come on. Stupid glove. Sometimes wants to work with these buttons, but sometimes doesn't.